Welcome to the Jersey Barrier, where we love highways and we hate New Jersey. My name is Jeremy, and today we're talking about the northbound section of US-35. US-35 is a pretty awesome road. We get it going up from Charleston, West Virginia, all the way up to Michigan City, basically the suburbs of Chicago. So we'll start on I-64 in West Virginia, and we will have US-35 for Winfield and Point Pleasant. I don't necessarily agree with this one. I think it should just be Dayton right away, since Dayton is the biggest city that this road goes to, and it's Dayton. And now we get our pull through for Point Pleasant, and we get an exit right away for Winfield. We get our first mileage sign for Buffalo 11 and Point Pleasant 32. So Point Pleasant, truly the bottom line primary control city. I disagree with this. I think it should be Dayton. And then honestly, if we're going to sign something big, but not too big, I would sign Beaver Creek, because that's basically a suburb of Dayton, and it's the second biggest city we go through for the rest of this length. And then additionally, I would probably sign Gallipolis on the Ohio side for the top line, just because Gallipolis is more sizable than Point Pleasant. And now we get our other mileage sign. We get further along. There's no more cities in West Virginia to sign, but for Point Pleasant. So we get Point Pleasant and Chillicothe OH, which is significant because of its junction with US-50 and US-23. And we get our junction for Point Pleasant, as we would expect. And then we have 2 Mile Creek, and you'll notice this if you're driving along 35 in West Virginia, and a couple other roads as well. But when you're near the state lines, the creeks and the roads are actually named pretty similarly to the mileage that you've been in the state for. So 2 Mile Creek is indicating that we are about 2 miles away from the border. This is just my theory, but it seems to check out when I look at all of the different creeks and things like that. And that 2 miles is reflected on this mileage sign that was just past that 2 Mile Creek. We get Point Pleasant 2, and then Gallipolis O for 4, and Chillicothe O for 66. I don't know why you didn't put OH or Ohio or something like that. We just get O, so that's very weird. That is incredibly weird. And now we get a pull through, the last pull through in West Virginia for 35 North for Chillicothe O. On our last exit, we do get 35 North Chillicothe, and we don't even put an O on there. And welcome to Ohio. Find it here. Still not a great sign, but this time it's not insulting because it's not on a giant arch, so that's not bad. And right away, we get 35 westbound, and as you know from the last video, 35 in Ohio is signed east and west, so we get 35 west for Jackson and Chillicothe. And I don't agree with that at all. If we're going to sign 35 west for double, we should sign Chillicothe and Dayton, or Beaver Creek and Dayton, or something like that, but definitely not Jackson on here. And on our mileage sign, we do get 3 lines, which is pretty awesome. We get Rio Grande, Jackson, and Chillicothe. So our control cities are not that great here, but we do get 3 lines, so that's pretty nice. And we do get on our minor junctions 35 West Jackson. But in Jackson, we do get 35 West Chillicothe. I don't necessarily agree with it, but they're going to do it anyway. And on our mileage sign, we get US-50 9 miles away and Chillicothe 10 miles away. So we can't sign Dayton, even though Chillicothe is, 25,000 people. It's fairly sizable, and it's a US highway junction, which is pretty nice. But you're missing out on signing Dayton here, so I don't agree with that. But now we meet 23 and 50, and we get 35 West and 23 North for Dayton and Columbus, which is a great sign. That is awesome. And we will exit off to stay on, and if you want to start a drinking game for every time we do that, you will be trashed by the end of this episode. So we will exit off at 35 West for Dayton. And on a mileage sign, no surprise, we get Washington CH and Dayton. This is a pretty good sign, just missing the secondary Beaver Creek, but this is just about as good as it gets. And our minor junctions, we do get Dayton and Chillicothe, as you might expect. And on our next mileage sign, we get Washington CH 11. I-71 is our secondary, and our primary is Xenia? Xenia is just so weird. It's a suburb of Dayton. If you're going to sign a suburb of Dayton, sign Beaver Creek. Or even better, sign Dayton. This is terrible. Why is Ohio doing this? Oh, and it's not just a one-off either. We get 22 miles to Xenia. We get 2 lines on the sign now, and we only get Xenia on the bottom line. This is getting stupid. This is terrible. Come on, Ohio. What are you doing? Sign the biggest city that this road goes to, and it's in Ohio. You can be in-state provincial and sign an actual big city. And we meet I-71, and we get Washington CH and Xenia. We don't get Dayton. Why would we get Dayton? We just get Xenia. And we still get Xenia. There's literally 2 towns or 1 town before Xenia, and it's Jamestown. We get Jamestown 7 and Xenia 12. And I figured out that Xenia, Ohio, is one of only 2 cities to have a capital X, or to start with the letter X, which is kind of ridiculous. But the other one is Xenia, Illinois. And nothing in Illinois is signed for Xenia because they understand that it's not an important place. But Ohio loves Xenia. I guess it's because of the X. Maybe X marks the spot. So, obviously the spot must mean you have to put it on every sign you can possibly put it on. In Jamestown, we do get Dayton 27 and Washington CH for our minor junctions. And after Jamestown, we don't even get a sign for Xenia. We get Bickett Road, which is the eastern edge of Xenia, and then Dayton 24. All right. And now our freeway will end. We will go 35 west for Dayton, and this actually splits off into 1 lane. So if you want to consider it exiting off itself again, go ahead. And we do get a mileage sign all through the mud and the construction and all of that, and we get Beaver Creek 4, 675, 7 miles away, and Dayton 12. So this is not a bad sign. This is pretty good. And this is on the road where we get a little bit of more stoplight action. There's a couple stoplights on this road, and one of the stoplights is incredibly weird. The first time I ever drove on this road, it was a weird sight. I was very confused, but it's a U-turn light. I didn't even know those existed, but they do. It's a U-turn light. It's exactly what it looks like. And now in Dayton, I'll spare the skyline considering we saw it the last time, but we do get 35 west for Eaton, which is perfectly reasonable. It is a fairly sizable city that 35 is the fastest route to get to, so that is a very sensible place to sign. And we'll keep left. We'll actually have to turn left here, so take another drink. We'll get 35 west for Eaton. And on our mileage sign, we do get Eaton 6, Richmond 22. 35 actually isn't the fastest route to Richmond, so really you could put a 1-line sign on here, and I would be perfectly fine with that right here. And just past Eaton, we get 35, turning off to stay on again. And obviously you can see it's 2 lanes. The left lane goes straight, the right lane goes right, and use turn signal. I mean, normally you're supposed to do that anyway, but now that the sign's telling you to use your turn signal, you really have to use that turn signal. So, here's to useless signs. And now we turn off and we get New Hope 4, Richmond, Indiana 15. At this point, after Eaton, I think it should actually be signed for Muncie. Muncie is significantly larger, and it's Muncie. So you could put New Hope, Richmond, and Muncie. That would be pretty good. And we merge onto I-70, and we get our arch again. And actually, our arch is saying, come back soon. So we get a leaving Ohio sign, which is pretty cool. And welcome to Indiana. As you can tell, our road gets significantly worse. And you can actually get rhythmic bumps on I-70 in Indiana. It's pretty terrible. It's a really terrible road. One of the worst I've ever driven. And now 35 leaves us. We get 35 north for Muncie and Williamsburg Pike for a road that probably shouldn't be named after this guy. And now on our mileage sign, we get Muncie 36. Perfectly reasonable. Maybe you could throw in a smaller town on there, but having Muncie as one line on the sign is perfectly sensible. And we get to the Muncie bypass, and we get 35, 3, and 67 north with no control cities at all. And I don't agree with this. We should definitely have, we could have a big, beautiful, green, extruded sign that says 35, 3, and 67 north for Marion. And it would be a really big, beautiful sign. But instead, we just have these little posts in the ground that tell us what route we're going to be on. Speaking of big green signs, this is what it should look like. Except Hartford City is probably not the control city I would go with. I would go with Marion. It's the biggest place that 35 goes to, and bigger than any of 67 or 3's control cities. And we turn left onto Indiana 28. We'll be concurrent with it, and we'll be signed for Alexandria. Alexandria is 28's control city. We don't get a control city for 35, but it should be Marion. And our mileage sign, we have Alexandria and Elwood. So those are both 28 control cities, not 35. And we get on to I-69, and 69 is signed for Fort Wayne. No surprise there, but Gas City is the secondary. I think this should definitely be Marion because Marion is fairly sizable, and it would be 35's control, or at least it should be. And Gas City is a couple thousand people. Marion is about 10,000 people, so I would definitely sign Marion here. Now we get our weird vertical sign, our vertical exit sign for 35 North Gas City. At this point, I think 35 North should be signed for Kokomo because you take 35 straight west and you'll end up in Kokomo. So you could put Gas City and Kokomo here. That would be pretty good. But we passed Gas City and past Gas City. So we got Fart City, and we are now signed for Greentown on the top line and Kokomo for the bottom line. This is great. And we meet 31 in Kokomo. We don't get any mention of 35 control cities, which should be Logansport here, but we get 31 North for South Bend, which is a great city or a great sign. So we should be probably 31, 35 North Logansport and South Bend, 31 South Indianapolis, but they kind of treat 31 as the big thing here. Oh, and turning off to stay on again. I forgot about, and all of the 69 ones as well. So you'll be hammered by now already. And 35 North, we exit off again. We get Galveston and Logansport. Galveston is probably not really needed here, but we have it anyway, so if you're going to put two cities on the sign, Galveston is probably the one you should put. And after Galveston, we get Walton and Logansport. I think actually there should be LaPorte here on the bottom here for Walton, Logansport, and LaPorte, because now 35 is the fastest route to LaPorte, and LaPorte is much bigger, and it's in the Chicago area. So you're getting into a major metro area at that point. And I know we talked about a useless sign, the one saying use your turn signal. Well, this one is stop when the school bus stops. Well, considering it's a double yellow, you don't really have a choice legally. So shout out to useless signs all the time, always. And we will exit off to stay on again. We will get 24 for Monticello, 25 for Rochester, and 35 for LaPorte. Very good. When 24 leaves us, we actually get 35 North LaPorte, so that is perfectly sensible there. And past Logansport, we get a mileage sign, but obviously it's not really that important because they threw a chevron in front of it. This is Royal Center for 9 miles away and LaPorte for 65 miles away. I think instead of Royal Center here, or maybe having 3 lines on the sign, but Winnemac should be as the second line here because it's a county seat, it's a few thousand people, and it's probably the biggest place we'll get to before LaPorte. After Winnemac, we're actually signed for Knox and Michigan City. LaPorte goes away, and Michigan City is past LaPorte, same metro area as LaPorte. So I don't necessarily agree with this. You could just put Knox and LaPorte. That would be a perfect sign. And after Knox, we get LaPorte 23 and Michigan City. So now we're kind of doing 2 primaries at the same time. So that's not bad. I would put on the top line here, though, I would put something like Hamlet or something to represent US-30 because we meet US-30 pretty soon, and US-30 is a freeway. So I would actually put Hamlet or just US-30 as the top line, and then LaPorte on the bottom line. On US-30, we have 35 south for Knox, north for LaPorte, and this is perfectly sensible. And once we get past LaPorte, we will get Michigan City 11, and we will crawl there at about 35 miles an hour. But instead of that, I'll spare you the time and we'll skip there. So we will end here. We don't get an end sign for 35. We do get US-20 for Gary, Michigan City, and South Bend. So that'll wrap up US-35. It has been fun, but we will no longer be on 35 anymore. And we'll talk about what was signed. Northbound, and you can feel free to pause. But I would make some changes. I would sign it north for Dayton all the way from the beginning. I would sign Beaver Creek as a secondary, and then for the top lines, I would use Gallipolis, Chillicothe, Washington CH, and then Xenia. You can use Xenia as a top line as well. And then I would sign Eaton. I would sign Muncie with Richmond as a secondary. I would sign Marion, then Kokomo right away, then Logansport, then LaPorte. And then as LaPorte's secondaries, I would use Winnemac, Knox, and Hamlet or US-30. And then after LaPorte, I would sign Michigan City. So thank you for watching. As we went from Appalachia down to the plains, stay tuned. We will have the holiday special. The Jersey Barrier holiday special is coming up soon. So be prepared, be ready, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.